Hi everyone! So today I want to take an opportunity to quickly discuss how I go about encapsulating Rivolis with size 11 Delicas and size 15 sea beads, as you can see in this necklace here. So depending on the size of the Rivoli that you use, the amount of Delicas you're going to need are going to be different. So in this case, I've got an 18 millimeter Rivoli. So what I've done, so this is a clear 18 millimeter clear Swarovski Rivoli. And what I've done here is I've counted out 46 Delicas and I've already strung them onto my thread. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch back through all 46 of these Delicas to make a circle with my thread. Okay, so now that I have all 46 Delicas strung up in a loop, what I'm going to do is where my tail and my thread meet here, what I'm going to do is tie a surgeon's knot. And then I usually just tie a second one just in case. There we go. Now what I always do is I stitch a few beads away from where my thread is, just so that it doesn't get in the way. Now, where my tail is, I should say. Now, I like to keep my tail. At the end of this project, when I finish it up, I will go back and use this tail to tie a knot with my thread and my tail when we finish this. You can snip it if it is uncomfortable or distracting for you. That's not an issue. And then at the end, you would tie a half hitch knot. So the way that you start to embezzle a Rivoli like this is with Tubular Peyote. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick up one Delica. And if you look here, you see that it's exiting from this Delica. So what I'm going to do now is skip over the very next Delica and then stitch into the one after that. So, see, this is why some people like to cut their tail. Get out of there. So what you see is that it has now stacked, right? We have a row where there's two Delicas stacked on top of each other. So then what I'm going to do now is I am going to, once again, skip the next Delica from the Delica where the thread is exiting and stitch into the one after that. Like that. Now we have another one where the two Delicas are stacked. Okay, and we're going to do that all the way around. I'm going to do this on camera, but I'm likely going to speed this process up in the finished product. Okay. So now you see I'm stitching into the last single Delica. So, and when I say single Delica, I mean right next to it, there's a row of 2. See, this is, I'm moving the tail away, we're pulling tight. So what it's gonna look like is this. Every other Delica from the first row is next to a row or column of 2 Delicas. So I'm exiting a single Delica. What I'm doing now is stepping right up into that top, the one on the top of, when there's a set of 2, I'm stitching into the top one. So this is the second layer. So now what I do, this is where it becomes it becomes a lot easier, is I'm now adding a Delica and I'm going to stitch into the next second layer Delica here. Pop, and it slides right into place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around this whole piece. So I'm stitching into the top set of 2, stitching in to the top set of 2. And I'm going to go all the way around. Okay, now that I have added a second Delica to every row here, you can see I am exiting from one of the pairs of Delicas from rows 1 and 2. So now what I'm going to do is stitch up through this next layer of Delicas. Oop! It got away from me. So one thing to note is it's really important to keep your tension tight. You can see I continue to pull it, and that way we're getting a rounded shape here. So now, once again, I'm just going to add an 11 Delica to in between each of the Delicas that are sticking out. So that will result in a stack of 3 Delicas next to a set of 2 Delicas. So here we go, I'm adding and stitching into the next one. So here we are, this is the stack of 3 that we're looking for. I'm going to go all the way around. All right, so now I have added my last Delica stack of 3 Delica here. So I've got 3 here, and I'm exiting from one of the stacks of 2. So now what I'm doing is I'm stepping up into the top of the stack of 3 of the next row. Oh, there, once again. So now I'm exiting one of the top. I'm exiting from the third of a stack of 3 Delicas. So now what I'm going to do is we are moving on. We are now done with the Delicas, and we are going to move on to the 15-Os. So now what I'm going to do, I call them 15-Os because of the 15-0 size 15C beads. So we are picking up a 15, and we are stitching into the next third of a stack of 3 Delicas. Like that. And we are going to do this all the way around. It makes it easy now because they stick out, right? So it's very visually easy to see where the next bead to stitch into is. Okay, so now I am adding the last 15-O, and I'm stitching in to the last set, the third of the last set of 3 seed beads that we have been stitching into. 3 Delicas, I should say. Now what I'm going to do is I'm stitching up into this next 15-O. I'm pulling tight just to make sure our tension still is good. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 15 between each 15. So I have added a 15, and now I'm stitching into the next 15, and I'm going to do that all the way across. All right, so I am now stitching into the last 15 bead. I have now put a 15-O, a size 15 bead between each size 15 bead. Oh, except I didn't. So I see I left a piece open here. So what I'm going to do now is go back and fix it. Okay, Now I'm actually stitching in to the last 15-0 here. So I have added a 15-0 between each 15-0. So we have that nice embellished look. And I am going to pull tight. All right, so now what we do, we've got this. What we're going to do is I'm exiting this seed bead here. What we're doing is we're going to make a diagonal stitch so that we can be exiting a Delica on this side. So this is easier than it looks. I'm exiting this seed bead. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch and I'm going to work my needle through as many Delicas as I can. Okay, well, we're going to do 3 for the first stitch. That. And now, so I'm exiting this Delica here, and I want to be exiting one of the Delicas that sticks out. So I'm stitching through 1 and then 2. And now I'm going to pull out. Okay, so now it's time to pop it in. So what we're going to do is we're placing it in there. I like to do it face down, and then sometimes it might take a little wiggling, and we work it in. There we go. All right. So now we have the Rivoli on. This is the front. What we're going to do is I'm exiting out of the back here. I'm exiting out of one of the seed beads that points out, that sticks out. So what we're doing is we are putting a 15 seed bead between each one of the Delicas that sticks out. So like that. So basically the same thing we did on the front, except we're going to do it on the back. Okay, now as I stitch in between the last 2 Delicas that are sticking out, I stitch through that last Delica, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give this a nice tug to make sure that the tension is tight. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, and I'm exiting this Delica here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to step up into the seed bead. And now I'm going to stitch a 15 seed bead between each of the 15 seed beads. I'm going to go all the way around like that. So same thing we did on the front, just we're doing it on the back, and we're going to go all the way around. Okay, so now I am about to add the last 15O between the first set of 15 O's. So I'm going to pull through here. So at this point, I am just going to go completely around, reinforcing this until I meet the tail, and then I'm going to tie off the knot. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to stitch through each of the 15 O's, all of them, both the first set and the second set. And that will hopefully tighten everything up a little bit, give you an opportunity to tighten the tension if you find yours is a little loose. I think my tension is pretty good. I feel good. This is the finished product. It's not going to fall out. I just want to make my way to the tail. Okay, so I've basically stitched to the tail here. Before I tie off, I want to take the opportunity to mention that if you didn't keep your tail, what you can do is you can always do a half hitch knot. So find a space between beads like this. And what you would do is you stitch under the thread gap. I think I might have actually stitched through the thread there, so let me do that again. And then you would pull through, make a loop, pull through. And you would do that a couple of times. In this case, I've got my thread here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch through the next two 15 O's and through the last Delica there so that my thread will meet my tail. So pull through, and now what I'm going to do, remove my needle, and I am going to tie a knot. And now I'm going to tie a surgeon's knot, which is just under and then under again. Pull nice and tight. And I prefer to use a thread burner instead of snipping off my threads. So it's a personal preference, right? So some people might take a needle, thread both of these here, and then stitch through so that the knot gets tucked under any of these beads, and then you still have some tail, right? You would do the same on this side and stitch the tail, or stitch the thread away from the knot. I'm going to use a thread burner. The Thread Zap 2 by Beadsmith. I recently got a new tip for it because it stopped burning. So it takes a second to warm up. Mine, again, this burner is pretty old, so I have to hold it pretty hard and for a while for it to heat up. Let's see, I always test it. It's still not hot. This actually might be a battery. Oh, it's warming up. All right. So what I do is just get as close to the knot as possible and you burn it right off. And this basically cauterizes the knot, so it helps it so that it won't unravel. Yeah, that looks like it's nice and cauterized. Okay, so now you have your beaded Rivoli. Look at that. Look how nice that looks. All right, well, feel free to drop any questions or comments in the comment section. As for the beads I used, this is a Delica color 792. It is opaque shale dyed, and it's a matte color. And then these 15 O's are the sterling silver, Mayuki size 15, so the color number here is 961. All right, now you know how to make embezzled Rivolis, which you can use for a variety of projects. All right, thank you, and don't forget to like and subscribe and check out my Etsy shop, Poppy Seed Beading Co. All right, happy beading!